football, so I was pretty busy growing up through high school, and I was a leader. So like everything I did, it was being part of a leader, and I always thought that it really wasn't that important. I mean, it was important to me then, but then now it's like, okay, I was made to be a leader, and I can follow off what I did growing up to become a leader today. So it's kind of cool how your past can make you who you are today. That being said, I mean, that was graduated 7-8 years ago, and I still use what I learned then today. When I was about 6 or 8 years old, I had a go-kart, and it would never want to stay running. I was always have carburetor issues. Luckily, we don't have to worry about carburetors no more, but we did then. So every time I go to ride it, we had to clean out the carburetor and everything. Well, my dad was like, I'm just tired of messing with it. I'm not going to mess with it no more. So, well, I ended up, instead of just cleaning the carburetor, I just took the whole thing apart. It was in a million pieces. My dad come home. He's like, well, you ain't riding until you put it back together. I'm like, I can put it back together. I took it apart. So, like 2 days went by, and I ended up putting the whole thing back together. And when he got home, I was out riding. So, when they tell you, like, you're born with a mechanical skill, you are. You can't teach it to just anybody. I mean, you have to want to learn it. We got, one of our guys came straight from Waffle House, and he has learned so much because he's wanted to. He's thriving to learn it. And I think it's really cool that you can have people like that. I mean, just like Justin. He drives a truck, and then now he's building his second engine. So I think that's really cool that, you know, he's actually saying, okay, look, I can do this. There's nothing in this world you can't do if you don't put your mind to it. My dad has been a mechanic since he was about 12. So growing up and having him around mechanical stuff, I've always been the one to like help my dad. If my dad ever needed a helping hand, I was there. So growing up, I knew I wanted to be a mechanic. It was just something that I wanted to do. And my dad fought it and fought it and fought it because he's like, I don't want you being a mechanic. So I worked retail, I did a little bit of construction, I sold cars. And then 2015, I come to my dad and I'm like, Dad, look, either I'm going to work for you or I'm going to go work for somebody else because this is what I want to do. I'm tired of, you know, trying out other things because all I'm doing is passing time. It's not something I want to do. I'm not going to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy or love what you do, then it's going to be hard for you to get up and go to work every morning. So find something that you want to do that like catches your attention. Like what I do is something different every day. Everybody's like, well, you know, you do a lot of rebuilds. Yeah, but there's no truck that's the same. I mean, it'll be the same for the most part, but they're all different. So every day you come in with a new obstacle that you'll face. I mean, whether it be having to get a broke bolt out in a different spot or figuring out how the wires go back, you know, just little things, but it'll still like use your brain. And that's like, you need to use your brain every day, because if you don't, then you won't learn. So like torque specs on trucks, I torque everything. I mean, Justin can vouch for that. He'll be like, hey, what's this torque to? And I know it because I've done it so much. Every time you do something, and I mean, even Justin, when he leaves this time, I bet you he'll remember a lot of the torque specs, because when you beat it into your head, it's just like everyday thing, you learn it. It takes, I think my dad was talking about, it takes like 66 days for your brain to actually have a habit. Well, a habit can be anything, whether it's learning torque specs or just what you do every day. So I've learned it. And I never would ever want to do something else in life besides being a mechanic. Justin, do you have any questions?
About coming up in life and doing motors, all that kind of stuff? Inch pounds, foot pounds? No, I'm just blessed to know you guys, and your story was crazy. I didn't realize you went construction. She did like water treatment facilities, like tore them down and built new ones, and the process she learned in there was pretty cool. I learned the same thing from trucking, like delivering chemicals to this place. I didn't realize how our water came to be. It's pretty fascinating. They should probably do a like toys, so if you want to learn how to fix your own toys, or in my case, my own truck. So it's nice to know that and have that little mindset, but it isn't for everybody. Like you said, like she's talking about Ethan coming from Waffle House. He had a mindset already for mechanics. He just didn't have the right spot. Now he's trying to find it. So it's awesome.
Yeah, he didn't have a push where he wanted to do it. He just he was comfortable where he was at. And the guy that used to own the shop that we own now, he's like, hey, look, I got a guy who works at Waffle House. He's a really good guy. You know, I think this would be great for him. And so my dad reached out to him, and I'm glad to have him. I mean, he helped Justin, so he's learning. He's been with us for like 8 months now, but I have enough faith in him that he could build an engine, you know, any time of the week.
Doing a front structure, he gave me all the torque specs. He had a picture on his phone of the which one to start and stop. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I do have the pictures too, because, you know, sometimes, not that I don't know, but if I second guess anything, I always go back and look and say, okay, this is exactly what it needs to be. Because I don't want to mess up, and I don't want to tell somebody else the wrong information. So it's always good to have it. Anybody can get a quick serve account. It's free. You have 5 engine serial numbers. So 5 trucks with different serial numbers you can put in, and you can have anything torque spec you want. They have service bulletins in there. It's a great thing to have for even if you're an owner operator truck driver, because you can go in there and put in a fault code and it'll tell you a description about it. So it's pretty cool to have. So I think everybody should have it.
Yeah. And that quick service, if you don't know what that is, it's Cummins software for their motors. Heck yeah.
But yeah, I think it's pretty cool that, you know, people have different lifestyles, and there's so many different mechanics out there, and everybody does things differently. I'm just glad that my dad is the way he is, so he trained me the way I am. Because if I was at any other shop, I probably I wouldn't say I wouldn't be as good as what I am, but I would not be as like advanced, yeah. Because you can go to MHC, and I don't want to work for a dealership like that. I'm not saying anything bad against them, but they just cut corners a lot, and I've seen it. So if my dad says anything about hiring somebody from a dealership, I'm like, Dad, I don't know about that, because like I said, you're trained. It's a memory thing with your brain. So if you go so long learning something the wrong way, that habit is so hard to break. I mean, you can't get no better, because you're constantly going back. And even sometimes when people come into our shop, it's hard for me to adapt the way they do things, and so it gets me aggravated because they're not doing it how we do it. And I know that people do things differently, but growing up, I just felt like that my dad's way was the right way. So I do battle with that. I am working on it, because there is the right way to do it at different ways, and people do it like that.
And there's always things to learn. Like, we had a funny moment yesterday. I'm already freaking out about my fuel pump being stripped out on the top side. And then on top of that, Allison's like, just check with my dad, because your motor spun way too freely when you were setting your rods and torquing down the bottom end. And I'm like, okay, now I'm thinking already about my fuel pump. Now I'm thinking about my engine need to be ripped apart. And I go to Napa, I order the stuff, and she brings me over and is like, feel this. It was super hard to move her motor. I'm like, okay, mine didn't move that hard. And I go into Jerry, and Jerry's like, Justin, you don't have any injectors. And he like, right away, it's like just learning. He's like, don't tell her that she's missing spark plugs. And it was like trying to be funny, and then she's like, oh man, I didn't realize that. So it's like little things you want to be so precise and right, make sure the motor's not having to come back apart, but we can forget a little tiny thing that would make it do that.
Yeah, I was like, man, I feel so crazy. I wasn't thinking that there's nothing that's holding the compression back, because it's just coming out the top of the engine.
Yep, so we're still spinning free.
That reminds me of, I used to drag race. In 2014, we sold our race cars to actually open our shop that we're in now, so it's kind of cool. But
Sacrifice.
yeah, and we used to, when I had my first car, Dad, the timing was off on it a little bit, so I've been fighting with all day. So the people didn't really understand, like, you just let us beat you. Like, I've been watching you race all day, and you ain't never done that before.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, everybody, you win your own race. Because if I could have went down there and won, but then I would have never knew that we beat our own race with a car.
Yeah. It's not about a shiny trophy, it's about the learning, the moral.
Yep. So then in the next race, I knew I could come out the trailer. And even our new cars, my dad's always worked on our engines. I mean, I still got one at the shop, so he's always worked on them. And I've always helped him. Like, anytime it come to anything like that, I was always right there because I wanted to learn as much as I could. And everybody's like, oh, you didn't go to college. You know, I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to have tuition that I had to pay for the rest of my life. Like, you know, a lot of my friends that I went to school with, I didn't want that on me. I wanted to be successful as I could without going to college. And I mean, having my dad hands-on, there's no other option to me because that was the best option for anybody, hands-on. So I just think it's cool that, you know, like I said, everybody's different and everything ends up how it needs to be. And I'm just thankful that we have our shop and that we are expanding. And I get excited when Dad even just talks about, hey, I found such and such. So we're on the lookout. What was it, the dyno?
No, he's doing like a test dyno cell.
Yeah, so if anybody, we found one that's a new one. They're a little expensive. So if any of y'all know anybody with a used one or one that they want to sell, we are looking for one so that we can break in the engines before we send them out. That's another thing that we're, got to get, because at first we were just going to swap the engines ourselves, but a lot of people are wanting us to send them. So we got to have something to break it in so we know it's right whenever you get it. We can check the injectors, make sure there's no fuel leak, just make sure that when you get the engine, all you do is put it in your truck and you're ready to go. So if anybody knows somebody that has one of those, just let us know. Send me an email, or even if you have to send Justin an email, that's cool. He'll let us know.
Yes.
Well, we're about to be at the shop.
That's a little background on who Allison is.
Yep. It's a little of it.
And if you wonder about this truck, it does have a Jake brake, guys. That's what you hear.
Yeah.
And then that whistle, there's a spacer they left out of the cool intake she has. So you get a little...
Yeah, so I bought this truck and it already had a little odding stuff to it, and they definitely didn't do a good job. They're supposed to order the parts for it. I still ain't got it, so I might just end up having to order them myself and fix it myself. But
it's a heck of a truck, and look where you've gotten with not going to college.
Yeah,
Got your own house, you got a car for your wife, a car for you.
Yeah, like I said, I've been very blessed, and really blessed is an understatement. I have anything that anybody could ever want. I mean, I started out young. I bought my first house when I was 19. So I started out young, but I mean, I have a lot, like Justin said. I don't have to really want for anything.